Hey, y'all. Welcome to another episode of When Love Comes, the podcast. I'm your host, April Nowlin. I am a certified relationship coach, and I am just on this crazy journey to help people to heal from heartbreak, to create a life that they love, and to prepare for the love they deserve. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. Thank you for being here. If you are a regular listener, thanks for coming back. I appreciate you guys. The one thing that I'll ask is at the end of this episode, just share it with somebody. Share it with someone who needs the information. So I'm excited about my guest today, Maya Dion. She is known as the Bounce Back Widow Coach, and we're going to dig into what she does and who she helps and why this is so important. So if you guys have been here, you know that I talk about my journey as a 3-time divorce and the healing journey after that, the grief, all the things that comes with that. And I'll tell you that going through a divorce is very different than losing someone that you love. Now, there's still a grief process, there's a healing process, but there's a difference. And so today we want to talk about that. So welcome to the show, Maya.
Thank you for having me, April.
It is an honor. We met online, which is, I think, where you meet a lot of people nowadays, right? But
Yes,
we
pretty
met
much.
online not too long ago, and I just really love the work that you're doing in the healing space. And so I just want to jump back in, right into the work that you're doing and how you got started doing that.
I did not set out to be a widow coach. I started actually in this widow coaching business about 6 years ago now. But before I was definitely a cybersecurity engineer. I was not thinking about anybody's therapy or any of those things. As a matter of fact, I was therapy averse, if you want to. And
Mhm.
so the whole coaching others of it all came from parts of my personality that I had not ever thought about, employed, or leveraged until the journey of grief with my husband. So I lost my husband at a very young age. I was 27 years old, and I had two small kids. And I'm looking around like, okay, there's got to be some book, some blueprint, some map, some self help, some Sally Jesse Raphael. I'm aging myself.
Right. Come on, girl.
And something out there that's going to help me. And while there were social clubs and there were meetups and things, tea parties and
Mhm.
International Widows Day, like brunches and things, there was no structural, here's what you do. And as at that age in my womanhood, I had so many different places that I was at a deficit because I was married, and not that it was a fault to be married, but I did not need to develop those pieces of myself. I had him. He
Yeah.
was my fill in the blank for everything. He was my first everything. And so adulthood was me letting him do it. I was very spoiled. I was a princess. It was like, honey, go do those things. And I would be the mommy and went, and that's fine. And so when he was gone, it forced me to grow up in ways that I had not seen anybody demonstrate. Right. So my mom had been a mom and a wife my whole life. My mom was not a single mom. I was very much Claire Huxtable, very much
Yeah.
Cosby kid growing up. So I had no idea how to solo parent. I had no idea how to be an independent woman, no idea how to come into my own as more than just a Black single parent and a Black single mom, if you will. And so when I was dragged to therapy, I heard something that resonated to me finally. I finally met with a therapist that I enjoyed, and she said something to me that piqued my interest, which was, if you can build it, if you can map it out, you can do just about anything. And at first I was cynical, like, I'll just be Beyonce then. How about that? I mean, make me a
Come
map
on.
and be Beyonce. She was like, well, if you had all of the steps, you could do something like that. I mean, I hope you can sing, but you can get there. And so I challenged her. She did actually pass away before I got to show her anything, which was another grief in my life that was kind of layering, making things difficult for me. But I did create the blueprint, lived it out, pulled myself up from a place of, I could not live in my old home anymore because I just couldn't be there. Plus, I couldn't afford it as a single breadwinner now. And so a lot of my life was in shambles after my husband passed. But I had graduated using that blueprint to really owning my personality, my widowhood, and defining widowhood for myself. And what it was independent, super mom, doing my thing, and pursuing my dreams and actually creating the happiness that everyone is in the rat race of life trying to get anyway. So
Yeah.
creating it for myself. And so that blueprint worked so well for me. I wrote a book about it. That book was picked up by Johnson C. Smith University. They were like, we got to have this. We're teaching it as an English course for these young ladies out here. And I'm like, okay, Jesus, that wasn't what I
Right.
had planned. I'm over here cybersecurity and like, well, I don't coach, but people were saying, Maya, I would love for you to walk me through these steps. Can you show me what you did? Can you coach me? And so the coaching was born. And I never intended to be the therapist because therapy to me is a different animal. They are in tandem, they go hand in hand, but they are different things. And I wanted to go the coach route because that's where I feel my personality lends to it. Because while therapy leans into the clinical sense of things and the providing a safe space to explore yourself and come up with your own answers, the coaching is the next step. It's like, so now that you know how you work, what you gonna do about it? And
Yeah.
so, and that's where I live. That's part of my personality. I keep talking about my personality because I'm pulling on my core values, which was something I also discovered in that whole creating of the blueprint. And here we are today. Mostly I coach on identity, core values, and applying that to creating a wonderful life after loss. So that's where I
Yes.
am.
Girl, and I think we said this when we met to plan for the show that you and I have such parallels in our journey. Like, um, me being the same, and that so I was a business coach before I was doing really a business consultant. I did some coaching, but it was more strategic consulting. And I was like you. I was like conference averse, tea party averse, like April, go to this women's why? Like, like for what?
No, thank you, please.
Right, right. Because we gonna sit around and cry and then do what?
That,
And then after that third divorce, which is the one that I say hurt the most, like they all hurt. Let me be clear, y'all. That was the wake up call, right? That was the what I equate to almost like the rock bottom, and God was just kind of like, "You done? Are you ready now for like something different?" Because I had been in that cycle of unhealthy relationships for 20 years, getting divorced the first time at 21 and the last one at 41. This had been a long journey, and I remember going to therapy, for real, for real, and walking through that journey of healing, and like you, having layers of grief. My biological mother died of a drug overdose when I was 23. I had not grieved that. I did not know that a divorce was something that you needed to grieve, and so going through that journey and then kind of doing the same thing, God saying, I want you to tell your story. And I was like, no, thank you. Right. Right. Like, I'm good. I don't need to tell the whole world I've been divorced 3 times. But when I did that, I would have women and men say, that's my story. I didn't know anyone else could understand because very much like widowhood, unfortunately, it's not an anomaly. It happens and we don't talk about it enough. And so your journey parallels mine as to how I moved from strategic consulting to now being a relationship coach and primarily working with people who are healing from divorce. And so I want to talk about something that I know kept me stuck in my cycle of grief is this term move on, right? That is what I was told, like after every heartbreak, after every, well, you just got to move on. You just got to move on. But I don't think that move on is what we need. What we need is how do we heal? How do we bounce back? So share with us a little bit about that, that kind of that term of like just move on.
so in your saying that, it makes me think of the way that I normally coach around moving on. I switch up my language to moving forward. But something just came to me and allowed me space to talk about, the Holy Spirit giving me something. It just gave me move with. not just move on. And that's really what healing is. That's what your healing journey is. And it kind of irks me for people to say move on, but also to say healed. Because being healed, I haven't met anybody where that's a completion thing.
Yeah.
Where and I'm talking about therapists and
Mhm.
speakers and coaches and other grieving people, nobody has reached this destination of healed. It is more of an ongoing life journey of healing where you're moving with what you have experienced and evolving into whatever the next door is, and a lot of times we like to say move on because we fall out of love with who we were. We miss who we were, or we fall out of love rather with who we are. We
Yeah.
miss who we were. We want that person with us. And the last place we looked for love, it was back there with that person. And so we're like, oh, I want that. I want that. And when a person leaves you, discards you, or dies, you're left with, okay, I died with them. I'm gone, a piece of me, they took it. And that's not true. It feels like it, but feelings are not facts. The fact is who you are and who you're moving with is going to be who you were on everything you learned back then. And now moving forward into whatever future is there for you that you're creating. And so move with is what I'm going to start talking about in the future, but move forward as what I've been saying. And that sentiment is around the fact that moving on is an obvious expression of, I don't like who I am without that person. I want to go and be that, but I guess I'll just forget about it and fake fine and act as if. And that's not a thing. You won't get anywhere. You'll be stuck. So let's change
Yeah.
that language.
Yeah, girl, when I say I feel like we share a brain,
Yes. Come on.
kid you not, there is this saying that I'm not sure where I heard it, where it came from, but it was something I held on to years ago about the word healed or healing. And I agree. I believe that healing is a lifelong journey, right? Particularly with my clients, I believe you can be healed enough for next stages, but
Mhm.
that doesn't mean your healing has stopped. And I'm so glad that you said that because I feel like when we're talking about loss or heartbreak or grief, it's almost like you have to get to this point of being healed where like it never affects you. It's never a part of your life. And I think that almost becomes the expectation, right? Like, I'm never going to hurt again. I'm never going to remember. Like, I'm never, and that's not what the healing journey is about. I
At
love
all.
also how you said something. And once again, like I said, I feel like we share a brain. Talking about our expectation along the healing journey.
Mhm.
So many times I feel like we expect to go back to the person we were before this happened. And that is never the case. And I think that is what keeps us stuck sometimes in the healing journey is because we want it to be like it was before versus, okay, what is this new me? Right? What does this new life look like? Whether that's with someone or without, but we get stuck in that, but it's not what it was before.
Mhm. Absolutely. It's a learned experience. Just like fire is hot because because you've been to fire, you believe that your only path to happiness is the one that you thought what it was before. And what I found out, something that changed my life and my perspective about grief was that there is more than one path to happiness.
Girl.
It doesn't have to be what you thought it was before. It's not go taboo, clutch your pearls. You're going to be happy without him. You happy he's dead? It's like, no, it's none of those things. Happy is not an anomaly. Happy is not a singularity. It can be whatever it is that you're making it along with who you were and who you're moving with. It's an ongoing process. It doesn't. And so that is the revelation that came to me about happiness because I definitely had in my mind what happy was and where I left it and how I could get back to it was all I could do in the first couple of years of my grief.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to talk about those first few years because we see you today, right? Looking good, smiling, helping other people. And I know what it feels like on my end of divorce recovery, literally having to pull yourself out of the depths, out of bed, I think my first, and let me say this, y'all, for those who are listening, this is not a comparison. These are two different journeys. I'm sharing my journey, she's sharing hers. So we're not comparing. But I just remember even those first few months of like, I don't even want to get out of bed. So I cannot imagine what you were feeling, but do you mind sharing with us? Because I want people to understand that the journey, right? The realness of the journey. So what was that like for you?
Oh man, yeah, I shut down completely. I had never dealt or experienced grief that close in my life before. Both of my parents were alive. My grandparents passed when I was very young. I had one grandma left, and she was still around. So it was like I had not dealt with death ever like that, and so I shut down completely. I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't sleep. I didn't want to go back to my home that we had purchased together. I refused. I had an all out, like, dead leg in the grocery store, little kid. No, I'm not going. I was sleeping between my parents, like, with my kids in my old bedroom, like I moved back in with my parents. Like, I shut down. And once I finally started functioning again, maybe, a couple of weeks after. It took me a few weeks to get it back into it. It was, clinical depression, like absolute depression. Like, I could not see a way forward at all. And I said something that my dad was still very much in my life. He's passed away now about 5 years ago from COVID. But at that time, this was 2009. I was in like a fit of frustration in the throes of my grief. I, yelled and threw everything. I said, I lost everything. And he
Yeah.
came to me from across the room with tears in his eyes and he said, no, you didn't. And I had never seen my dad cry, never seen that kind of emotion. And he was a, you didn't lose everything. And at the time, I think I was still angry, but I still remember that moment. The door in my mind that was shut about the possibilities, about happiness, about gratefulness, about anything that I also had. When he said that, the lock broke a little and it continued to pry open. And that's really the space I was in. It was complete despair and hopelessness. And that is where I meet a lot of widows. They're in that space of nothing's ever going to get better. Happiness is not a thing. No other man is going to be, because a lot of times when you're young, what's pushed on you is, oh, you're young, you'll marry again. That is the last thing you're thinking of. You would rather go into the street and sell your ankles. Like, there's
Right.
nothing about new love that sounds good to you. And even loving others by default, like your children, you don't want to anymore because you're like, well, what if something happens to them?
Yeah.
I will just die. What if, and everything is waiting for the other shoe to drop? Well, what else is going to happen to me since
Yeah.
God don't like me no more? You go into a complete pity party of the world is against me. And so coming out of that had for me a lot to do with my core values. For a long time, I did the faking fine thing. I did the, oh, I'll just go back to work. Oh, I'll just pretend it's fine. Oh, I'll split myself into two different personalities where I'm at home being grieving mom and out in the world being, oh, I could date if I want to. Like, I did all of that to mask and not have to deal with my feelings. And I think a lot of it came from the rhetoric about dealing with feelings. Oh, sit with yourself. What does that mean? Oh,
Yeah. No,
a
for
lot
real.
of things that people say that, oh, give yourself grace. What? Oh, find yourself. Where am I? Like, am I hiding? Can I stop? Like, and lean on God. Come here, Mr. Jesus, let me lean. Like, what do you mean by these things? And I don't think that people are trying to be obscure. I think they either have not experienced it for themselves or do not have the language for you to leverage the wisdom they're trying to give you. And the more I kept hearing these things, the more I kept saying, well, that's not for me. I can't figure that out. It's too hard. So I'll just fake it. But once I did lean into core values, and it's a funny story that goes with how I found core values. But once I did get into that, I started to realize that very interesting cliche, which is another one of those things where I had it in me all along. But it's hard to explain if you don't use the right language. And
Yeah.
that's frustrating to people when you don't use the right language. So, to answer your question, I was at the bottom, ears full of tears, making carpet angels, rock bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you said something that um people don't understand is I think you're right that people don't know what to say. Or we have these cliches that sound good, many people don't know this, but I was a co-owner of a prenatal ultrasound studio for about 2.5 years. We did like 3D, 4D, 5D ultrasounds. What we weren't prepared for, though, was people who would lose their child. And so we would have women who would come in and they'd be, X amount of weeks and they're excited. And then they'd come back for an ultrasound. And we were not diagnostic, we were imagery. So this was just coming in to get your happy pictures. And then they'd come in 2 weeks later. And unfortunately, our technician would have to tell them, I don't hear a heartbeat. And thankfully, our technicians were trained. So I did not do ultrasounds, I was just the business owner. But we hired people who were trained in this area with the words to say. And so we had done this webinar with another lady in the Virginia area who works with people who've lost a child. And it was just so interesting to me, the different phrases, right, that we are just so commonly say that we don't understand the impact in those situations, right? So just briefly, for those that are listening, because, once again, I don't do this work. A lot of people listening don't do this work. What are some of those phrases that we may say that it's just like, don't do that?
Oh, man, there's an entire betrayal list. It's like there's in a better place. That
Mm,
sucks to hear because you're like, oh, well, what was wrong with this place? I bet you if I
right.
asked him, he'd say he want to be here with me. There's, oh, you're young, you'll marry again, as if having a partner was the only thing that you're grieving. You're grieving many things about not having him there anymore. Oh, heaven is co-parenting with you.
Mm,
That is a nice sentiment. It really is. But if you don't know how to leverage heaven because your relationship with God is in disrepair, that is not comforting.
right.
There, there is, oh, he's not in pain anymore. Well, that's a nice thing to say unless you were like my husband who tripped and fell and died. No sickness, no pain before, just
Yeah.
God needed him more. Now you're beefing with God.
Yeah.
It's like, don't
Yeah.
bring him into this because my arms are not long enough, even though they want a box.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And lean on God. That's a hard one because if people are not strong in their relationship with God, and at that moment they may not be, they have no idea how to leverage the Bible, no idea. And they're
Yeah.
like, how do I do that? And most of the time people don't have an answer. And most for those other phrases, they don't have elaboration. They just know that that's what I've been told to say. I'm sorry for your loss. You know how detached and disconnecting that sounds? Like it's just my loss. And so you feel sorry for me, but you're not in it. Like, oh, I'm sorry that happened to you. That feels so dismissive. And it doesn't mean you don't mean to. I know you don't. And another phrase, and this is the last one I'll do, is I can't imagine. Yes, you can. You just don't want to.
Want to-
You don't want your mind to go there. You absolutely could imagine what I'm going through, and you don't even want to think about it. It's that bad. But you also don't want to do me a disservice by saying you can imagine. So
Right.
you just say I can't to try to be polite. And those things there, some of them are more hurtful than others. Some of them, we're adults. We can move into our own forgiveness pattern about what they could or couldn't mean. But there's quite a bit of internet fodder for
Yeah.
people looking for that. Like, oh, what are the worst things you can say? What is the wrong thing to say? What I would like people to know is whether you say the right thing or not, the best thing you can do for a widowed person or a grieving person is to just be there.
Yeah.
Be there when you said you were going to be there. Be there after everything is over, the dust has settled. Call, text, keep inviting them. Don't be like, oh, well, they said no the last 12 times. So
That's
keep
a good one.
inviting them because they're still here. Somewhere in there, they're waiting for you to give up because they've given up on some of the things that they used to hope in. And you have to prove that your love hasn't gone anywhere. And if you can do that, you've done what you're supposed to do as a friend or family or
That is such great advice, because like you said, and I do think that even in with some people, I don't know that you can say the right thing, right?
Mm.
Because You just can't. You said something about, leaning on God. I was, and once again, not to compare, but to share, with my third divorce, I was on staff at church. I prayed for other people. I did all those things. And I woke up after my husband telling me he was leaving in 20 minutes to telling God, I hate you. Do not talk to me. And I had to show up every Sunday at church for people saying, I'm going to pray for you. I was like, don't. Right. So even those of us who are going through grief in these super spiritual, and you think you're super spiritual, right? We still have those moments where, people would just be like, well, just pray about it. I don't want to talk to God
Exactly.
because my whole perspective at that time was you could have stopped this. You could have protected my heart. You could have protected my 10-year-old child from this man. You could so I love that you said even like telling someone to, well, just go pray, just lean on,
Yeah.
because I can only imagine you feeling like, well, God betrayed me too. Well, I want to talk to him.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. So I thank you for sharing that because, like I said, in many cases, we don't know what to do. But I do think there is something profound about what you said about just showing, right? Not judging, not trying to fix, not trying to repair, but just being there for that person is so huge. Because I can imagine the isolation that you're feeling. I have a friend of mine who lost her husband, and they're older, but they got married later. Lost her husband, I want to say it was like last summer. And so I ran into her like a month later and I was just like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And one of the things that she was telling me was just how she felt so isolated because she was no longer invited to the couples events. They did a lot of stuff with other couples, marriage groups, and so she was feeling very isolated because it was just like for her it was like, "Well, why did you stop inviting me?" For them, it could have been, well, we're trying to be sensitive, right? Because we don't know what to do. But just that feeling of now being left out and isolated.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That isolation is emotional and physical because you are in a space where that was a one-on-one relationship that you lost. And so no one knows what went on in your relationship like you do. And so no one knows all the many deaths that you're grieving every day. When you wake up, the way he used to lay next to you, the way he sounded in the bathroom, the way that, like all the things that he's doing to get ready in the morning and, the little inside jokes, like no one knew that side of him. You begin to think maybe you made it up because no one else has witnessed this. And so you feel extremely alone in your grief because no one's going to understand it either. It would take all day to explain it. No one's going to get it. And so the ways in which you lost him, you are alone. And if you have children, now you're a monument and you have to be this monument of everything he was, everything he wanted for them, all of the legacies you're supposed to carry on, the responsibilities as a wife. No one else can tell you how to do these things. Everyone's saying follow your heart, go with your gut, do what he would want you to do. And you're like, but I don't have a map. He didn't tell me. I don't have a list. I don't have directions. And yet no one is there to say, here's what I did. Here's a book. Here's a something and some advice from someone who actually did it. You got all kinds of advice
Girl.
unsolicited from aunt this and uncle that who, are dealing with something different, but got all of the opinions in the world. And it's very isolating. And to not be invited is just confirming your belief that you are alone. So being invited and having a friend that is consistent continues to provide the proof you need that says, stop that. You're not alone. Stop that. People do love you. Stop that. Everybody didn't leave you. Like my dad coming to tell me, no, you didn't lose everything. Continuing to show up is the proof. And just like affirmations, if you don't have proof, you're lying.
Yeah. Come on.
So yeah, that be the contradiction to the lie that's playing in their head over and over again. You're all alone. That foothold where the enemy's trying to take a stronghold, you knock it out. You knock it out. Be that person that negates that.
Yeah. Ooh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I want to ask about, and obviously you can share as little or as much as you feel comfortable, the journey for your children, right? How did you support them along that healing journey as well? Because I think sometimes we forget, and I'm glad you brought up, having to still care for your children. Sometimes we forget that the death of your spouse affects so many people, right? But especially if you have children, what did that look like for them?
So the short answer is, how did I deal with that? Experimentally, because there was no, again, blueprint. I just so happened to have a mother whose degrees and her doctorate are in child education and special education. And while when you think of special education, you think of learning disabilities, another pillar of special education is emotional support and a grieving child support. And so she was able to kind of makeshift create 504 plan, which if you guys don't know what that
Hmm.
is, it's an educational plan that's basically a special education, but it's not for impairment or serious disabilities. It's just a plan, a learning plan. This kid needs to be alone when he takes tests. This kid is this, that, those types of things. And so she helped me create that in the school because my oldest son was at the time he was 7 years old, and his way of dealing with things was for me and performative for mommy, very stoic. Even at 7 years old, he was like, okay, I'm protecting mommy. I'm not going to be sad for mommy. I'm going to try to be a good boy for mommy. But at school, I'm getting reports from his teacher that he's leaning back in his chair trying to die like dad. And so while that's yet another blow for me traumatically, I'm having to figure out, how do I support this kid? How do I figure this out? And so counseling was what he went through. We put him into counseling and built the microcosm of teacher, counselor, doctor, parent
Hmm.
around him so that we were all in contact. And that's something that a lot of people don't know that couldn't be put in place in your school. That's something, that type of 504 plan, that type of grief plan, but they're not going to offer it to you. They're not going to say, hey, we can do this. You have to be your own advocate or find your parent liaison advocate to say, listen, we need a safety net around this child. And instead of being labeled Black children as disruptive or a behavioral problem, like, no, let's address what's really going on with this kid because he's super smart.
Yeah.
So now as a 23-year-old man, he graduated with honors. He graduated with FOS and finished his college degree in 2 years.
Yeah.
This is a whole man now, but being there for him as a child was about being proactive,
Yeah.
about things on my own I probably wouldn't have had
Yeah.
without God stepping in and being like, okay, I got you. Your mom just so happens to be exactly who you need, and knows the people and does the things. And in everyone's life, you find that there are supports. There is something there. You just have to be open to it and look for it. For my youngest, he was 18 months old when his father passed. So he doesn't remember him at all. But in that and supporting that kind of grief, what it turns into, even though he went to therapy, as a teenager, it turned into, well, I don't have a dad. I don't need that. I never have.
Mm.
What do I need a man in my life for? Not realizing that my dad had been there, his uncles had been there, his godfathers had been there. I put him in jujitsu so that he had coaches and things that were there. He's in soccer, like not realizing he's got this entire network of men in his life that are mentors and providers. And even my now husband has been there and been around since Nicholas was 3. So it's like, he has what he needs, but being there for him was about providing it without bombarding it, without saying, you need this and you need that. And I'm a single mom and, telling him how I feel, which is,
Yeah.
how is a woman supposed to raise a man? Here's how. You pick the men you want to be in their life
Aw.
and stand up that fence around him and say, okay, here you go. When he's older, he'll look back and go, oh man, I wasn't alone.
Yeah.
And that's something that as parents, we take personally what they say, especially as teenagers. And I have had to learn the hard way that when they get older, they will understand it's not about you. You still got to do what you have to do in supporting and covering this child. whether it be in prayer or in counseling. Cover this kid and continue to do what you know is right, and it'll turn out.
I love what you're talking about. It's something that I preach about is really a community of care,
Hmm.
regardless to the trauma, to the grief, is that it is so important for us in life to have a community. I think one of the first times I saw like the power of a community outside of my own journey of having, it was the first time in my life that I had a therapist. I had a life coach for the first time. She inspired me to become a life coach because I didn't even know what that was. My physical doctor, right? Making sure that I was keeping up on my health, family, friends, spiritual support, whether that's pastors, it is so important to have this community of care. I remember my daughter. So my daughter plays basketball. She's a senior this year. And her freshman year, she tore her ACL. And what I thought was just an injury, I did not realize was this traumatic experience for her. And so to get her back to the court, it wasn't just her surgeon. We think about the physical, oh, just go to surgery, right? But she ended up having to go to a sports psychologist because mentally,
Hmm.
every time she hit the court, she would freeze because, like, what if I fall again? What if I hurt myself? It was people praying for her. It was my brother. He's coach sports, him uplifting her. Right. So I feel like anytime we are in this season or on this healing journey, we need to implore a community. And it's so tempting to isolate. It's so tempting to try to do it alone. But there's a scripture that I stand on where God tells Adam, it's not good that man be alone. And I heard it so much growing up in context of marriage, right? But I don't think that was the core of what God was saying. I believe what God was saying was, we are not meant to do life alone. And so if you're someone that's listening to this and you're isolating yourself, don't do it alone. Like, I don't believe we can do it alone.
I love that. I love that you said that. Man, there's so much in that I never even thought about. And I love when other people bring other things out of the scripture that I've never heard. Yes, indeed. And then there are people like us with that introvert personality, where it's like, it doesn't mean I'm quiet or boring. It just means that I process things internally, and I'm not a broadcaster when it comes to, I'm not a, I call my son, because my son is an extrovert. I'm not a Michigan J Frog. Like, I'm not out here like, look at my feelings. Like, somebody help me. I'm not the, oh, I'll just die. It's fine. Like, I'm not that person either. I'm not Eeyore either. So it's like, it's hard to ask for help. It's hard to accept that you need help because it feels like the same weakness you're suffering from in the first place. How you leaned on something and now it's gone. So now you don't ever want to lean on anything ever again. You're like, the rug will not be pulled out from under me because I'm going to stand on the grass. I'm going to stand for myself. Yeah. And while I understand the defense mechanism and the brain trying to protect itself, you quickly find that isolating yourself will have you stagnant for longer than if you were to just speak to somebody who gets it. And I say that to people who are looking for coaches and looking for therapists, because they don't understand their aversion to therapy when they're like, oh, I have this therapist, but she just doesn't get it. And I hear the same thing over and over again. She has a whole husband at home and have never experienced being deserted the way this feels. And she's telling me it's going to be okay. And I just don't believe her. And it's like that piece, believing the person is helping you because they have a shared experience, it's real. It's
Yeah.
real. I'm not going to go ask, somebody who's never left the ground how to fly. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ask the person flapping their arms over there, like the person that just landed, because they're doing it. And that was another reason I became a coach, because I was like, I didn't see me out there. I didn't need to be, the coach didn't need to be Black. She didn't need to be female, but it helps if that's what I'm looking for, as to feel that recognition, that connection, because there is something to being Black and female and having children and being out here in the world uncovered and feeling like a stereotype. That's not the only piece, but I attract as a coach a lot of other women that are like, I've never seen you before. When they think of a widow, they close their eyes and they think of an elderly woman
Yeah.
who, interestingly, is not a woman of color. Isn't that interesting? When you think, oh, what does a widow look like? That's what you think of. And so when they see me and they're like, you were 27? Like, what did you even, how did, and then there's so many that come out of the woodworks. That's me. That's me. I didn't know how to do life. And so that community built around, I get you, is really important. It really is.
Yeah, yeah, you are preaching to the choir. I started doing this work because I could not find the help that I needed, and I could not find the help that I needed that looked like me.
Hmm.
There was no one like me. There would be couples, right, who would try to help, but we've been married 40 years. I've been divorced 3 times. Like,
Right. Yes.
what are we talking about?
What are we talking about?
So you're absolutely right that having someone who has walked in your shoes and come out the other side, and having someone that looked like you, and for me, it was having someone in a faith-based space, because there is still so much stigma and shame tied to divorce that people would say, I can't even talk to my pastor. I can't even talk, because they're just looking at me with like this shame and, you're the woman at the well and, all these things. And
That's
so
crazy.
there's so much truth in wanting to connect with someone that has been through what you've been through.
Yeah, when you say that guilt and shame, it's the same with widowhood because it is taboo and frowned upon to be mad at God, to be angry and to feel justified in your anger and to not want to speak to him. That
Girl,
is like, oh my gosh, Jezebel, throw the
right.
holy oil on her. Like I sing. And one of the first things I went to go do is to, for therapy for me was to go and join a choir, small
Mhm.
choir, little group. When I tell you they were so very churched and so very, there is an evil spirit on you. There is a demon. You can't come back here no more. And I'm like, get it off. Aren't you supposed to be church
Right.
people? Get it. But instead, they're shunning me and saying, that anger and all those things, like that's just created church hurt where I
Yes.
was like, well, dang, like, what am I supposed to do about these feelings?
Right.
You start feeling like something's wrong with you because you are exactly what God knows that you are, which is just angry. It's just a feeling. God is
Yeah.
not phased by your little anger, and he absolutely
Come on.
he has put things in place to comfort you, to keep you, to hold you together. So if he was mad at you for being mad, he wouldn't do all that. He'd leave you in the mess. So there is a place for people that are angry with God. And I want, if anybody is listening, I want them to know God does not forget about you because you're angry. God knew you were going to be angry before you were born. He was like, she ain't
Yeah.
gonna like this. That's why I'm not going to tell her. But
Yep.
I'm not going to ask her opinion about this because she gonna tell me where I can go. So so yeah, he knows. It's
Yeah.
just, he's cooking something that you don't see the ingredients for. Let him
Come
cook.
on.
Let him cook.
Yes. Yes. I so believe that. I tell people all the time, it's okay to be angry with God. He's a
Mhm.
big boy. He can take it. Take it.
Exactly.
I've been there. And
Exactly.
I literally remember telling God, like,
Mhm.
I hate you. Like,
Mhm.
I hate you. I have spent, I was doing I spent my whole life serving you, and
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
like, I know that feeling. And, at the end of the day, God was like, come here, baby. Give me a hug.
Mhm. Mhm. Your little anger is not bigger than my love. Come on over here. Come sit
Come
next to me.
on. Come on.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I want to briefly touch on something, and this is not, I say this, how do I want to put this? I'm going to just say it. I want to talk about dating.
Mm.
And I don't dig too much into that because I don't want this perception that your healing journey is for your next relationship, right?
Yes.
That is something that in the divorce recovery space was really big, right? Heal for your next spouse, heal so you can pick better. There wasn't this conversation around, we'll just heal for you,
Mhm.
right? And so I wanted to put that disclosure out there because as we talk about this, I don't want this to turn into the purpose of you getting on a healing journey is your next relationship. But I do want to talk to the person, Maya, who maybe feels like, I might be ready again. So just share with us a little bit like what that was like for you, because you're remarried now. But what that was like for you of like, kind of when do you know you're ready? What is that?
Oh man, where to start? So many places I can start there. When I started dating, it was absolutely escapist. It was absolutely just to do something else, to be someone else, to talk about something else, and to not have to deal with widowhood. That is not everybody's story. But another place I was being ushered towards was remarriage with ministries and things. That's the first place they wanted to put me in
Yep.
churches. Go to the singles ministry,
Yep.
and and it's like, yeah, I'm not really interested in the whole marrying thing again. I did that. And for a long time, I wasn't interested in being married. I just wanted a space to be something else besides being widowed. And what I learned the hard way was the reason that dating and a new partner is not the cure for your loneliness is because everybody and everything on the outside of you is temporary. And if we treat our heart like a puzzle, jamming in puzzle pieces just because they look like they fit, or because if you turn it this way and close your eye, it might get in there. The worst part is not only did you hurt yourself putting it in, but it's really going to hurt when it comes out. You think about a
Mm,
puzzle piece, it's really going to hurt. And
girl.
so if you are not going to be okay with something that you've put in, if it has to come out, then you probably shouldn't have put anything there in the first place. You probably should have talked about healing that space for yourself and being on a healing journey of what that looks like for you. And my first serious relationship after widowhood and dating, I was dating a guy, and I was doing the fake and fine thing. Oh, I'm independent. I make six figures. I do what I want. I got more than you in your bean bag. Like, I was
Things, girl.
all the things, right? And one day we were arguing about something, and he said, you're not the confident girl that you say you are you?" And I was like, "How dare you?" And it was like the lowest blow, and I was just like, and I'm trying to keep my composure on the phone, like, what you talking about? Like, like
Yeah.
gangster. But like after we got off the phone, I was like, wow, so I'm presenting as this person who's ready to date, who can handle relationships, who is, down for whatever. And all of the, I don't need boundaries. I'll see what happens.
Mm,
But when it starts to get serious and he starts to do what a husband would do, which is call you into your better self, I wasn't ready.
yeah.
I was hurt and frustrated. And I was like, you know what? The truth that he's telling is that I'm not confident. I'm pretending. And the reason is because the places in which I'm pretending to be confident are unhealed,
Come on.
are wide open. The places that I'm pretending to be fine and okay with my career, I hated that job. With my womanhood, I had no idea what I was doing. With my finances, I don't speak money, I speak computers. And ashamed of that because you're like, I'm a whole adult and don't know how to write a money order, but I'm not gonna tell nobody,
Right.
so I'm doing it on my own. I'm solo parenting, no idea how to do that. I don't know any single moms. My mom's Claire Huxtable. Come on.
Yeah.
So like there's so many spaces that I was not confident, that I was pretending. And so that was the funny story I mentioned earlier. I picked up this book by Russ Harris called The Confidence Gap.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. And
Yep.
in it, he starts talking about core values.
Yeah.
And as I'm discovering my core values, that's when I'm healing on a healing journey in those spaces, because I realize all along, while I'm mad at God for taking things from me, He has already put in me the things I need to build the bridges to those spaces. And I just thought that that was a river I wasn't going to be able to cross. I'll never be a good solo mom. I'll never be good at money. I'll never love my job. I'm just going to make the money. When I employed my core values to build the bridge across, I can be creative and be a better solo parent. I can be productive and get a financial advisor and figure that out. I can employ the parts of me that God already made me. So, full circle, it took me in a healing space, moving forward and with, and also going, okay, God, I see what you did there. I guess you didn't leave me by myself. I guess you already knew I was going to need these things. And then healing my relationship with God. And so that came from something he said, yes. but was an evolution in me that had to happen before I could 10 years later marry that man. So, yeah.
That is so good. That is so good. I have a coaching program for those who think they're ready to date,
Mhm.
but it's called Becoming the One.
Mhm.
And we do a lot of inner work, a lot of work on ourselves, because the premise is, and not that I believe there's only one, but the premise is become the person you want to be with, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
invest in yourself. And so it's so funny. That book is where I learned about core values as well. Yes, yes, I love that book because I was like,
Mhm.
core values, what is
Yes.
that? And I use that a lot in my coaching. So as we close, I do want you to talk briefly just about your communities. You know, I love that we were able to have this conversation, but I love it more that you can be a resource. And I want to make sure the audience gets to hear what you offer, and then how to connect with you.
Absolutely. So I have coaching programs one on one and ones that you can do on your own that are recorded however you learn. And so, where you would find all of this, the coaching programs, the communities that I offer, and the events that I'm doing, they're all on mayadion.com. And you just follow the widow links there. And I'm also on Instagram under the Bounce Back Widow. I'm on YouTube at Maya Dion. So I'm all over the place. I'm even on TikTok as the Bounce Back Widow. So if you just Google the Bounce Back Widow or Google Maya Dion, you'll find me and I'll be there.
And I will also put that information in the show notes as well. And then, of course, we'll connect with you on social and all the things. But Maya, I just want to say, well, first of all, I could talk to you for hours because, like I said, I
Yeah.
feel like we share a brain.
Yes.
But I just want to say thank you again for giving your time to this because, like I said, it's something that we don't talk about as much, and especially talk about from the perspective of experience, right? Of lived experience. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, y'all. Just thank you. This podcasting is a labor of love if y'all have never done it. But I do it for this. I do it for the Mayas, for the people who have decided to turn their pain into purpose, for the people that are helping others, to give you guys the resources. Because, like I said, my passion is really helping you to heal from heartbreak, create a life that you love, and then prepare for the love that you deserve. And that's not just romantic love, right? But that's loving yourself again, right? That's love with your children. That's just the relationships that you deserve. So once again, if this has blessed you, please, please, please share it with someone that you know. Share it with someone that you don't know because you don't know who needs this. And then I want you guys to go to Maya's website if you need it. Come on over to April Nallen if you need it, because I want you and me to be ready when love comes. Bye.